Thank you for listening to Stories at Pink Meow Meow Audio. Hope you enjoy the story. When I was 17, I ran at full speed in the rain just to catch up with a back. At that time, I did not know that reckless act would cause my entire youth to bear one person's name. I transferred to middle school number 7 on an April morning when the sky was still damp with bone mist and cherry blossom petals were flying all over the schoolyard. Backpack on shoulder, arms holding a stack of books, I stood in front of the door of Class 11A. My palms were sweaty. It was the third time in my life that I changed schools, but the feeling of being lost was still as fresh as the first day. The homeroom teacher led me into the classroom, gave a few simple introductions, and then told me to find my own seat. The sound of tables and chairs moving rustled, and all eyes in the class seemed to pass by me so quickly that I didn't even have time to see anyone's face clearly. Only one person, sitting in the last row by the window, from beginning to end, did not look up. The early morning sunlight passed through the glass window, falling on his shoulder in a hazy streak of light. White shirt, collar open 2 buttons, lazy posture leaning against the wall, one hand twirling a pen on the index finger. The face tilted under that light, so angular that it was almost cold. "Tu Niem Ha, you sit at that empty table." The teacher pointed to an empty seat nearby. I nodded slightly, bit my lip, and quickly walked back to my seat. Just pulled out the chair, the table leg hooked right into someone's lap. Is the book on my hand tilted? "Ah!" I screamed softly, preparing myself to witness the pile of books falling like Niagara Falls, when a hand reached out very quickly to catch the falling pile of books. I raised my head at that moment and met his cold, black eyes. He was the boy sitting at the back of the class. The distance between us was very close, so close that I could clearly see his thick eyelashes. Just for a brief moment, I heard my heart skip a beat unconsciously. "What are you looking at?" He frowned slightly, his voice hoarse. Not fast, not slow. I was startled, quickly withdrew my hand, and softly thanked him. He didn't answer, just silently put the pile of books back on my desk and returned to his seat as if nothing had happened. I was stunned for a long time. Until the class started, I finally came back to my senses, buried my face in my book, my heart still beating wildly. What is his name? I couldn't concentrate on my studies that day. No matter what the teacher was saying, I could only hear the wind blowing outside the window, mixed with the sound of pens scratching on paper. Unconsciously, my eyes kept glancing towards the back of the class. He kept his head down, writing something in an old black notebook. The light filtered through the messy locks of hair, illuminating the straight bridge of the nose and the tightly pursed lips like a quiet, distant black and white painting. At recess, my friend and I quietly reminded, "Do you know, that guy's name is Luke Ting Da, the coldest hot boy in our school." I raised my eyebrows and whispered, "Sounds like a character's name in a novel, even more so than a novel." The deskmates chuckled. "He's good at sports, has good academic results, plays the guitar well, but is cold as ice, never smiles." I made an "oh" sound, as if I didn't care, but my heart itched as if someone was lightly scratching it with a feather. Luk Ting Da, why does this name sound so strange and familiar at the same time? After school in the afternoon, I slowly packed my things. When standing up, I accidentally dropped the pen under the table. I was so discouraged that I bent down to pick it up, but my hand touched a small black notebook. The cover is a bit worn, and there is a faint star-shaped sticker stuck to the corner of the notebook. Just as I was hesitating, a long, slender hand was one step faster and picked up the notebook. I looked up. Luke Ting Da stood right in front of me, looking down at me. The distance was so close that I could see his eyes were not completely cold, but had a bright light buried somewhere, just waiting for someone to touch. He lowered his eyes, his voice indifferent and unrelated to him. I flusteredly responded with an and quickly moved aside to make way for him. Luke Ting Da walked out, his back tall and thin, silent. I stood there for a long time, my eyes following him involuntarily. There was something very vague, very silly, just quietly sprouting in my heart. It's like spring has come and I've met the first star of my life. The first day at 7th High School finally passed, but the feeling of foolishly meeting Luke Ting Da still lingered in me like the aftertaste of a cup of hot cocoa, both bitter and sweet, yet warm to the bottom of my heart. That night, I rolled around in bed until late, picked up my math book to read, and then absent-mindedly wandered off. My mind was filled with images of him tilting his head in the morning sunlight. They say 17 years old is very emotional. I guess it is true. The next morning, I went to class earlier than usual. The schoolyard was still deserted. Only the sound of the security guard's broom sweeping across the wet brick floor could be heard. I flipped through my books to review the test at the beginning of the week, a small test for the teacher to evaluate my math level, my never-changing obsession. The homework the teacher gave yesterday was more difficult than I thought. When I submitted my paper, I secretly sighed a few times, accepting my fate of receiving a failing grade. But when the teacher returned the papers this morning, my eyes almost popped out. The score on the corner of the card was 87 out of 100. The round red numbers were so bright that they almost lit up the whole page. I flipped through the test, surprised to find that the little mistakes I was sure I had made had somehow been corrected. The edited handwriting was slanted, strong yet familiarly neat. I glanced towards the back of the class. Luke Ting Da was still sitting with his chin in his hands, looking out the window as usual, looking leisurely as if he had nothing to do with this world. But I'm not stupid. My intuition tells me it's him. A thought crossed my mind. Why help me? During recess, I sneaked down to the gym alone. As soon as I sat down on the stone steps at the edge of the yard, I saw Luke Ting Da standing there alone. He was wearing a baggy school uniform, cargo pants, long legs, sitting lazily on a stone bench, wearing headphones, his eyes absent-mindedly looking up at the sky. I hesitated for a few seconds, then gathered my courage and walked closer. I called softly. He took out one earbud, turned to look at me, his eyes calm. This distance was much closer than in the classroom, so close that I could clearly see a faint ink stain on his shirt, the dark blue shimmering like a sea. "Thanks." I bowed my head, my hands clutching the hem of my shirt. Luke Ting Da was silent for a long time. I almost thought he would ignore it, when suddenly I heard a very soft, very quiet voice. "No thanks needed." Just 4 cold words like the March wind made my heart hot. I was at a loss for words, just standing there like a stupid statue. He looked at me for a few more seconds, then put his headphones back on and turned away, ending the one-sided conversation. I walked back to class, feeling both embarrassed and a little happy. It suddenly rained in the afternoon. The April rain came as quickly as Ari Lepp's text message, "Okay, Dundorf." I was struggling to pack my books when I realized I didn't have an umbrella. The whole class dispersed, pouring out into the schoolyard in pairs and groups like schools of small fish leaving the ocean in the rain. I had to stand in the hallway and sigh. Just then, a black umbrella suddenly appeared in front of me. "Let's go." His low, curt voice carried no trace of extra emotion. I looked up and saw Luke Ting Da standing there. He held an umbrella in his hand, his uniform was wet and a pack on the shoulder. I was stunned for 3 seconds. When he had time to react, he took the initiative to pull the backpack from my hand, threw it over his shoulder, then gently lifted my arm, pushing me under the umbrella. The distance between us was so close that I could even smell the faint mint scent coming from him. "Oh, you don't have to," I stammered in silence. Luke Ting Da lowered his eyes, his voice lazy. "Go fast." I obediently followed, my cheeks red as if I had been roasted. When Yuan arrived at the dormitory gate, Luke Ting Da did not say anything more. Simply thrust the umbrella into my hand and turned away, walking straight into the misty rain. I clenched the black umbrella in my hand, watching his back gradually blur in the spring rain. My heart suddenly felt restless. That day, I put the umbrella carefully under the bed. Every time I open the drawer, my heart beats like a small drum, and I knew from that moment another person had appeared in my world, a person named Luke Ting Da. April rain in this city is strange, not the kind of noisy showers nor the kind of violent downpours, but just falling in tiny drops like shy touches that last day after day. In those days, the school hallways were filled with steam, and every step on the wet brick floor left a faint mark. I often sit by the window, chin in hand, watching the rain fall outside, feeling like the whole world is slowly passing before my eyes. The only difference is that the world has had the shadow of a person since when? Ever since Luke Ting Da held an umbrella for me, there seemed to be a strange, vague feeling between us. No one said a word to each other, but the distance between the two people naturally narrowed. I started to get used to occasionally catching his eyes stopping on me as quickly as a passing wind. I also got used to the fact that whenever I forgot to bring my textbook or exercise book, someone would quietly put a spare one on my desk before class started. I even got used to the way he leaned against the third-floor railing. Wet shirt stuck to slender body, lazy eyes watched the endless rain fall. Sometimes I wonder, if I take the initiative to take a step forward, can I touch that cold world? That afternoon, it rained again. The rain was heavier than usual. The rain poured down, turning the whole schoolyard white. Gym class was canceled. The whole class had to sit in the classroom waiting for school to end. I sat by the window, chin in hand, looking out. Suddenly, a basketball flew from the airport straight onto the classroom roof, accompanied by a shout, "Hey, hey, who dropped the ball?" The noisy boys ran out, pointing and laughing. I also looked down curiously. Amidst the bustling crowd, I saw a familiar figure. Green Star, he stood back, hands in his pockets, half of his body wet from the rain, his black hair hanging loosely on his forehead, his eyes calmly looking up at the ball stuck on the roof. Another boy nudged him. "Ding Da, you're the tallest in class. Fly up and get it." He lazily glanced at his friend as if he was annoyed to death, but said nothing, rolling up his sleeves. I watched intently. Luke Ting Da stomped his feet and jumped, a beautiful jump like a leopard reaching out to catch the moon. The basketball in his hand fell down, rolling around under his feet. The crowd screamed. The pinnacle of professional football, I could only stare blankly at that figure, strong, free, wild to the point that it made my heart tremble. After school, the rain still did not stop. I sat there for a long time, not daring to go out. The black umbrella that Luke Ting Da gave me yesterday, I also brought it with me today. But for some reason, I felt a vague expectation in my heart, waiting for someone, waiting for something that I don't even dare to name. It was not until there were only a few people left in the class that I stood up. As soon as I reached the door, I saw him standing there. Luke Ting Da Lung leaned against the wall, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a box of soy milk, bowing his head and slowly drinking. The rain blew through the hallway in cold gusts, the hem of his uniform fluttering in the wind. When he saw me, he curled his lips, threw the milk carton into the armored box beside him, and lazily said, "Let's go." I didn't ask where he was going, just bowed my head and followed him as a natural habit. The black umbrella opened again, covering their heads. With every step I took, I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Under the wet rain, I stole a glance at him. Luke Ting Da is almost a head taller than me. Broad shoulders, long steps, cold and quiet demeanor. But I know behind that appearance is gentleness, patience, and silent protection. A kind of gentleness without noise, a kind of quiet pampering like spring rain, seeping into people's hearts without them knowing it. When I arrived at the girls' dormitory, I turned around to say thank you, but Luke Ting Da quickly pulled the umbrella out of my hand, not giving me a chance to open my mouth, and took it away. His voice was short, but I bit my lip. "Remember to pay tomorrow." He bowed his head and lowered his voice. In a flash, the wind and rain blew past my head. I smelled the scent of mint wafting past my head. My whole body felt like it was enveloped by something soft. I hugged the umbrella to my chest, absent-mindedly watching his figure gradually disappear in the misty rain. I can only think to myself, Luke Ting Da, can I slowly step closer to your world? Can I touch the light in those cold eyes little by little? The 7th high school's spring sports officially began on a sunny day. The stadium was packed with people. The loudspeakers echoed everywhere, mixed with Vu's cheers. The atmosphere was bustling like a miniature festival. And I was standing still in the crowd, holding my registration number in my hand, my heart filled with excitement. I signed up for the 4x100-meter relay race at the invitation of my classmate. At first, I just thought it was just for fun. But when I actually stood on the field, facing hundreds of eyes, I realized I was so nervous, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. Luke Ting Da was there too. He was playing basketball, now standing in a corner of the court, arms crossed, leaning against a lamppost, eyes calmly observing. I see him, or rather, only see him. Nimhae, get ready. My teammate patted me on the shoulder, pulling me back to reality. I nodded, taking a deep breath. A long line of female athletes stood at the starting line. The whistle blew, tearing the air. The girls were like arrows shooting forward. It was my turn. The baton was passed to me by my friend, a little wobbly. I tightened my grip on the stick and charged forward with all my might. The wind blew past my ears. My heart beat wildly. My feet felt like I was stepping on fluffy clouds. I heard chaotic cheers coming from outside the track. Look up, only 50 meters to the finish line. But just then, a sharp pain tore through my ankle. I slipped. Everything happened so fast, I didn't have time to react. The body tilted to one side, losing balance. The moment I fell, the first feeling was not pain, but shame. The surrounding shouts silenced in an instant. I closed my eyes tightly, preparing myself for the impact on the cold ground, but a warm and strong arm promptly embraced me. The expected fall did not happen. Instead, I was pulled into someone's arms, enveloped in a familiar scent, a faint mint scent mixed with the scent of sunshine and wind. Opening my eyes, I saw a familiar face at close range. Stupid! A low voice rang in my ear, full of sternness and reproach. Luke Singye, it's him. The stadium seemed to explode again after a moment of silence. The chatter was deafening. The cheers were deafening. But in my small world, everything disappeared, leaving only the chaotic pounding of his heart and a hug so tight that I could hear his heartbeat matching mine. Luke Singye let go of me, lowered his head to look closely at my red and swollen ankle. "Can you walk?" he asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of worry. I bit my lip and shook my head. Immediately, Luke Singye didn't say another word, bent down to pick me up. The entire stadium froze for a few seconds. The screams from the girls exploded like fireworks. I also buried my face in his chest, so embarrassed that I just wanted to disappear immediately. "Let me walk by myself," I stuttered and shook my head. Luke Singye sneered, tightening his embrace. The next thing I did was drop me in the middle of the field. Silence. In his arms, I could hear my heartbeat, chaotic like a chaotic drum cong. Luke Singye carried me straight to the school's medical room. The nurse examined my ankle and said it was just a minor sprain, and I needed a few days of rest. I breathed a sigh of relief. While I was struggling to find the words to thank you, Luke Singye sat down in the opposite chair, picked up the bottle of mineral water, and opened it. "Drink it." I took it, my hands shaking. The air in the medical room was so quiet it was suffocating. I looked up, about to speak, when I met his eyes, a gaze I never seen before. Not cold, not indifferent, but just gentle and something else, like patiently waiting.
Why did he run so fast? Luck Ting Da spoke first, his voice low. I bit my lip awkwardly. "I want to try to make my class win." Hearing that, he chuckled softly, his low laughter flowing out like warm water. Stupid. I blushed and did not dare to look up. A long while later, Lukting Das softly said, "Next time if you can't hold on, then stop." I was stunned, raised my head to look at him. "No need to force yourself. I'm here." A simple sentence, but like an umbrella shielding me from the stormy world out there. That afternoon, the rain stopped again. I sat by the dormitory window, looking at the gloomy sky outside. Long was still floating like the spring rain that had not stopped. In my desk drawer, I kept a small piece of paper, on which was written a line of words in pencil that seemed to be slanted slightly. Ton Niem Hea. Don't be afraid. I'm always behind you. Since the sports day, I have become the center of attention of the whole class. Not because of any outstanding achievements, but because of the scene of being carried by a cold hot boy in front of everyone. My friends surrounded me and teased me endlessly. "Tuniam Hia, you should thank your sprained leg. Correct. Fall in exchange for public hold. Worth it." I was both embarrassed and amused. All day long, I just covered my face and ran away from the teasing words that were flying around like a swarm of bees pounding a hive. But the funniest thing is that every time I remember that moment, my heart automatically skips a beat. Out of control, out of understanding. I just know that every time my eyes carelessly touch that tall, thin back, I blush and turn away. There was one small change that I think only I noticed. From that day on, Lukting Da seemed to care about me a little more. Not openly, not ostentatiously. It's just that when I limp into class, there's always a bottle of mineral water on my desk. Just when I need to go out, someone will quietly hold my hand to walk over the slippery steps. Just when it suddenly rains, a familiar black umbrella will naturally open in front of me. Not a word too much, just firm and gentle action. Those things are small but enough to fill my heart every day. Every day, beat the calendar. One late afternoon, my classmates and I stayed behind to clean up. The whole class has only 2 left. 3 people cleaned up. The sound of the broom rustling echoed in the empty space. I stood on the chair and reached out to remove the congratulatory sports banner hanging from the ceiling. Trying to reach a little higher, the plastic chair wobbled and I play with. Just when I thought I was about to fall, a strong arm wrapped around my waist and pulled me safely to the ground. It's Lukting Da. He frowned, glaring at me, his eyes darkening. "Are you crazy? What if I fall?" I stuttered. I think I can reach it." Before I could finish speaking, he patted my head like one would coax a stubborn child, not allowed to think like that. I heard. The feeling of his hand on my head was so warm and gentle that my whole body seemed to turn into water. My heart was pounding in my chest, my face was so hot I doubted I could cook an egg right there. That night, when I got back to my dorm room, I lay on my bed, holding my phone and typing away. But in the end, I didn't text anyone. There was only one blank page of notes. These are the lines I wrote and then deleted. "He touched his head today. Today he said he was not allowed to think like that. Today I think I like him a little more." I smiled foolishly and buried my face in the pillow, then suddenly realized that I liked Lukting Da. Not just because of the times he helped me, not just because of his cold, absent-minded appearance, but because every time he looked at me, even if it was just a glance, I felt like this vast world became warmer. As if just with that look, the cold wind turns into spring. From that day on, I started to notice him more. His petty habits, like the way he always quietly cleaned up after the boys in class messed up their homework, like how he always leaves tissues in his pocket for his classmates, or how he secretly writes math formulas on the table for those who often forget to bring their notebooks. No one knows. No one cares. Besides me, you have silently watched every little gesture and let yourself fall, little by little, into the whirlpool called love. That weekend, the school held a spring cultural festival. The hall was filled with flashing lights, loud music, and all sorts of craft stalls and cute little games. I was dragged around, laughing loudly with friends, pretending I was fine. But actually, my eyes are always searching for a figure, searching for a person. Standing in front of the handmade bracelet counter, I was absent-mindedly choosing back and forth. I ended up choosing a dark blue cord, simple yet elegant. I was planning to knit myself a bracelet, and if I was brave enough, give it to someone. At night, when I returned to my room, I hid under the blanket and bent over tying each knot. Clumsy fingers, tie and untie, then tie again. But somehow, even if I remove it 100 times, I still don't feel bothered. Because I'm thinking about him. Just thinking about him makes everything gentle. It doesn't matter if the string tightens your finger until it turns red. It doesn't matter if you have to do it 100 times. Because that person is Lukting Da. The hall was packed that night. Warm yellow light shone down on each row of seats, illuminating faces filled with excitement and eagerness. I stood backstage, my hands gripping the microphone, my heart beating like a drum. I have never dared to sing in front of a crowd, but this time I don't know why I want to try. Because someone is here. Someone I hope will listen quietly. The MC called my name over the loudspeaker. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The spotlight shone straight into my eyes, making it impossible for me to see anyone in the row of seats for a moment. Only a sea of shimmering lights and countless blurry shadows. I clutched the microphone, trying to calm down. The intro music played softly and familiarly. The song I chose was a spring ballad, gentle as the wind that blows through the April sky. I gently closed my eyes and let myself follow the melody. The voice came out a little shaky, but the more I sang, the more fluent it became. Each word is like flower petals falling on the lake, creating soft ripples. If one day I stand at the crossroads and you just turn around, I will always be there waiting for you. I sing with all the immature vibrations in my heart. Sing for one person. Sing for a gentle gaze that once passed me on rainy afternoons. Sing to a hand that silently protected me when I fell. Sing to an age of 17, so beautiful that just a light touch is afraid of breaking. When the song ended, I opened my eyes slightly, and in that moment, I saw him. Lukting Da. He stood at the end of the hall, in the middle of the noisy crowd. Still the familiar pose, hands in pockets, tall and thin figure, lazily leaning against the wall. But that gaze penetrated all the lights, penetrated all the strange faces, just to stop on me. Not cold, not indifferent, but gentle to the point that my heart trembles. As if in that moment, the whole world was reduced to just the two of us. Just me under the yellow light and him under the starry sky. I clenched the microphone, trying to smile, as if nothing special, but my red ears soon gave me away. Below, the applause sounded like firecrackers. My classmates screamed, "Tunyam, please be kind." I bowed and ran off the stage as if running away. My heart was beating chaotically in my chest. My legs were so weak they felt like they were about to turn to water. I hid behind the hall, huddled in a dark corner, holding my face and breathing heavily. Oh my God! I looked at him and I was completely burned by his eyes. Before my heart could stabilize, a figure quietly appeared in front of me. It's him, Lukting Da. He leaned against the wall, looking down at me, his deep, black eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the night festival. No one spoke, only gentle breathing, the sound of distant background music, and the breath of spring wafting through the air. After a long while, Lukting Da asked softly, his voice hoarse, "Who are you singing for?" I heard I did not dare to answer. My throat felt tight. I couldn't utter a word, but my eyes definitely gave me away. In my eyes, there is only him, only one person. From beginning to end, there is only one person.
Lukting Da looked at me for a long time. Then suddenly, he chuckled softly, a very small smile, not cold, not distant, but warm, gentle, like a breeze blowing through a green meadow. He reached out and touched the top of my head lightly. This time, it wasn't a pat on the head in a coaxing way, but a caress, a doting action carrying a kind of indescribable gentleness. He whispered, "I know." My heart pounded. I bowed my head, bit my lip,
nodded, and shook my head like a silly little hamster. Luktingda burst out laughing, his laughter echoing in the quiet space, like a clear stream flowing through a crevice in the rocks. He withdrew his hand, put it back in his pocket, and turned away. Before leaving, he said softly, his voice as light as the wind, "Next time, I'll sing for you alone." That night, I sat by the dormitory window, hugging my pillow and looking up at the starry sky, my heart filled with a strange feeling as if I had just stepped onto a new planet. The planet only had two people, me and Luktingda. And all the stars in the sky seemed to be smiling and blessing us. In May, the royal poinciana flowers in the schoolyard bloomed. Pale purple petals fell all over the brick road, dyeing the sky a gentle, bewildering color. I sat in class, chin in hand, looking out the window, my heart drifting with each gentle breeze. Since the cultural night between me and Luktingda, something seemed to have changed. No one said anything, no confession, nothing could be said. Just the look in our eyes when we look at each other seems to carry another layer of meaning. Just casual gestures like adjusting my bag strap, opening my water bottle, or giving me the best seat in the library all became so natural. It's like he's considered me his for a long time. But on a hot summer day, a casual remark from a classmate shattered that fragile peace. I heard that Luktingda is about to transfer schools. Really? What's wrong? His family is preparing to move to another city. Looks like mom and dad got a new job or something. I am holding my books and preparing to go to class. Hearing this, the hand paused in mid-air. My heart beat strongly and then fell silent, as if falling into space. Trying not to hear, I bowed my head and walked quickly to my seat. But my mind was completely blank. About to transfer schools? I peeked towards the back of the class. Luktingda was still sitting there, his body lazily leaning against the chair, his eyes calmly turning the pages of the book, expressionless. No different, just like every other day. But that very calmness made me feel extremely uneasy. If the rumors are true, if he leaves, who will be waiting for me in the rain? Who will silently reach out to catch me when I'm about to fall? Who else looks at me with eyes that contain the galaxy? I clenched the book in my hand, my fingers shaking. I never thought that just the thought of losing him would make me panic like this. That afternoon, I sat in the library pretending to do homework. Every 3 minutes, I secretly looked up at Luktingda. He sat at the table across the aisle from me, still the same familiar focused gaze, hand holding the pen and turning it rhythmically, occasionally frowning slightly because of a difficult math problem. The afternoon sunlight passed through the glass window, drawing a faint streak of light on the bridge of his nose. The scene was so beautiful that it made people want to cry. I bit my lip, finally couldn't help but gently write on a small piece of paper, "Are you really going to transfer schools?" Folding the paper, I nervously tapped it on his desk. Luktingda raised his head, his deep black eyes reflecting the image of me standing there awkwardly. I didn't dare look straight, just awkwardly handed him the piece of paper and turned back to my seat. I thought I would have to wait a long time, but after just a few seconds, I felt a small object touch my hand. "Make that piece of paper." I opened it tremblingly, only able to say one word. "Uh-huh." No denial, no explanation. A word like a knife cut deep into my heart. That whole afternoon, I had no mind to study anymore, just sat there absent-mindedly watching the words dance before my eyes. My mind was in turmoil like a small storm. At night, I sat curled up in the corner of my bed, hugging my pillow and staring at the handmade bracelet I was knitting. I was going to give it to him, but what's the point of giving it to him if he's gone? Why keep it? I was angry at myself for being a step too slow. Slow to speak up, slow to admit, slow to hold his hand. The next day, it rained. May rain is not like spring rain. It was as fierce as the release of all the pent-up emotions. After school, I don't bring an umbrella. Standing under the classroom's porch, I watched the rain fall heavily, my heart heavy. A hand reached out from beside me. It was a familiar black umbrella. Luktingda stood there holding an umbrella, his eyes silently looking at me, not saying a word, just like many times before. I looked at him, my throat choked up. There were thousands of questions I wanted to ask, 10,000 questions I wanted to keep back, but in the end, I just lowered my head and walked under the umbrella. Walking beside him, I heard the sound of rain falling on the umbrella. listening to the steady footsteps of two people, listening to the sound of my heart breaking little by little. At the dormitory gate, I stopped, clutching the strap of my bag. I raised my head, gathered my courage, and asked in a trembling voice, "What if I say I don't want you to go?" Luktingda paused. The rain still kept pouring down. He looked down at me, his deep black eyes filled with complex emotions. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Finally, he gently reached out to brush away the hair stuck on my cheek, his voice extremely soft. "Don't cry." I froze. I had been crying without even knowing it. Salty tears mixed with rainwater, running down the chin and falling to the cold ground. Luktingda lowered his eyes and grabbed my wrist, his warm fingers squeezing lightly. "Wait for me." A simple sentence, yet it lit a small fire in my heart. Wait for me. Not goodbye, not the end, but a promise, an unspoken promise. From that day on, I started counting the days, each day as if counting down to the moment of separation. Every morning on the way to school, every afternoon after school, every time I secretly glanced at Luktingda, I told myself, I have to say it, I have to keep him. But then when I actually faced him, I softened. That indifferent gaze, that faint smile, that tall, thin figure lazily leaning against the railing, everything was like a fragile pane of glass that made me not dare to step forward, not dare to break it, not dare to let him see the confused emotions in my heart. That day, the sun suddenly shone brightly. The sunlight shone straight down onto the schoolyard, hot and harsh like burning. I sat in class looking at his back. The boy was still standing silently in the third-floor hallway, his eyes absent-mindedly looking out at the large yard. Someone in the class whispered, hearing that Luc Tignier submitted his transfer application. My heart clenched with a sharp pain as if someone was squeezing my chest. There's no time left. If I don't do something now, I might lose him forever. After school, Luktingda quickly walked out of the classroom. I saw his tall, lonely back like a faint streak of light in the chaotic crowd. Without thinking further, I stood up. Run like never before. Through the crowded hallway, through the calls, through the curious eyes, I only saw that back, just wanted to catch up, just wanted to hold on to Luktingda. I call. He stopped and turned around. The afternoon sunlight poured down, drawing soft lines on his face. He looked at me, his deep black eyes reflecting line, panting, his face flushed, his hands clutching the hem of his shirt. I ran over and stood just a step away from him. This was the first time I took the initiative like this, the first time I didn't avoid it, the first time I wasn't afraid. My heart was pounding like it was going to break out of my chest, but I still raised my head to look straight into his eyes, my voice hoarse. "Hey, I don't want you to go." A simple sentence, but it was all the courage I had. The air between us seemed to freeze. The summer wind blew through, carrying the light scent of parasol flowers. Luktingda looked at me for a long time, so long that I thought I would faint from excitement. Then he exhaled softly, took a step forward, and pulled his hands out of his pockets. Slender fingers reached out, gently touched my cheek, tenderly wiped away the sweat from my temple. "Stupid," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I don't want to go anywhere." I stared in surprise. Luktingda smiled softly. His eyes seemed to carry the warm, sunny sky. "But there are things I can't choose." His voice was so soft that it seemed like a gust of wind could blow it away. "If possible, I want to stay. I want to stay for you." I bit my lip. Tears couldn't help but flow, salty at the corner of my mouth. Not because of sadness, but because of happiness to the point of heartache. He also can't bear to leave. He likes me too. All the waiting, the worrying, the silent vibrations are not mine alone. Luktingda lowered his head and pressed his forehead against mine. The distance was so close that our breaths mingled. He whispered, his voice low enough that only I could hear, "Wait for me." I nodded until my head almost fell to the ground. The afternoon sun was brilliant. The parasol flowers were flying in the wind. I stood under the golden sunlight, holding his hand tightly. for the first time, bravely holding on to what I wanted to hold on to. No more waiting, no more retreating, no more shyness. Just a heart full of life, daring to run after that back, daring to shout to the world, "I like you. I want to be with you. I'm not afraid anymore." From that day, under the golden sunlight, between me and Luke Tingda, there seemed to be an implicit, vague agreement. No one made it clear, no confession, no status. It's just that every time his eyes stop on me, I feel like I'm an exception, and every time I smile, I see that tall figure quietly looking into my eyes, so gentle that I don't dare to look for long. We are like two straight lines slowly leaning towards each other, slowly, gently, but irreversibly. One afternoon, during self-study, my classmate, the most gossipy girl in class, rested her chin on her hand and whispered, "Hey, Nimho, do you know?" I turned my head and blinked. "Know what?" She smiled mysteriously. That Luke Tingda, when I was in 10th grade, had a crush on someone. I was startled, as if someone had hit me in the chest with a hammer. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Who?" His classmates shrugged and didn't know for sure. They only heard rumors from his old classmates that he secretly liked a female classmate. Kung is very kind, always silently helping. I was stunned. Liking someone, secretly helping, it sounded strangely familiar, like that story was repeating itself to me. My heart clenched, a strange feeling rising in my throat, not because of anger nor sadness, but a very new, very silly, very childish emotion. Throughout the whole class that day, I just sat there tapping my pen on the table, unable to form a single word, only thinking about that mysterious 10th grade classmate. What kind of person is she? More beautiful than me, more talented than me, or more gentle and delicate than me? The more I think, the more depressed I become. The more I think, the more I want to find a hole to hide in. After school, I lazily cleaned up my books. While I was struggling, a shadow fell on my table. Looking up is Luke Tingda. He stood there, holding 2 bottles of mineral water, and threw me one. To go to dinner? Lazy tone, calm eyes, but I felt embarrassed. I just bowed my head to clean up. "Lee, I have an appointment with a friend." Finished speaking and still wanted to bang his head on the table. Such a clumsy lie, everyone can see through it. Sure enough, Luke Tingda raised his eyebrows and lazily asked, "Which friend?" I made it up. "Deskmate." Luke Tingda looked at me silently for 2 seconds, then suddenly burst out laughing. Low laughter carried an undisguised smile. He leaned down and put his hands on my desk, closing the distance so close that I almost fell over. Jealous? I am confused. Jealous of what? Jealous of dirty rumors? Oh, I felt guilty and turned away. No, no, no. Luke Tingda narrowed his eyes, his voice dragging on as if he was teasing. I killed my hand. I was just curious. He chuckled. Then, in the dim yellow light, Luke Tingda leaned down and whispered in my ear, "She is you." I was frozen and couldn't react. I just sat there like a silly statue. From the first time I saw you, I knew that no one could replace you. That voice was as gentle as the summer breeze caressing every cell in my body. He stood up straight, lazily adding another sentence. "Next time you think about something else, I will punish you with hugs." Then he turned and walked away, leaving me sitting there, face red, heart pounding, mind blank. That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed, hugging my pillow, remembering every word he said. "She is you. No one can replace her." I smiled foolishly, burying my face in the blanket. Outside the window, the night wind caressed the tree branches. The moonlight gently fell on the floor. I know I'm living the best days of my 17 years. days when just thinking about one person makes the world brighter. At the end of May, the summer wind began to blow, bringing the smell of newly cut grass and the lewd sound of cicadas throughout the schoolyard. It is also the time when the drumbeat ending the school year rings like a bell signaling the end of the school year. I sat in class, hugging my exam books, but my mind was completely drifting away. My eyes occasionally glanced toward the back of the class. Luke Tingda was still sitting there, his tall and thin figure leaning against the chair, one hand holding a pen, the other flipping through a book, the slanting sunlight falling on his messy black hair. So quiet, so peaceful, and so beautiful that it makes my heart stop. In the afternoon, my class organized a small party to say goodbye to the school year. Food was spread out on the table, and laughter filled the room. I laughed too, laughed a lot, but my heart was still in limbo because I knew today might be one of the last times I would be with him as a classmate. When the party was over, everyone started to clean up and leave. I also slowly picked up my bag and stood up. Stepping out into the hallway, the afternoon wind blew the hem of my uniform. The sunset dyed the sky red, reflecting patches of light and dark across the ground. Just as I was about to turn back, someone suddenly pulled my hand, and it was Luke Tingda. He stood against the light, the sunlight covering him like a faint halo. His eyes were both serious and gentle. "Yeah, a little confused. Come with me for a moment," he said, his low voice carrying an unusual urgency. I held the person for a few seconds, then nodded silently. We walked along the small road behind the school. The road is less frequented. Both sides are planted with royal poinciana flowers and purple lagerstroemia. The wind blew gently. The flower petals fluttered and fell on her hair and shoulders. No one spoke. Only the sound of wind and footsteps mixed together. I gripped the strap of my bag tightly, my heart pounding. The air around me felt tense. I could hear my breathing so loud that I just wanted to scream to break the silence. Finally, Luke Tingda stopped under an old sycamore tree. He turned to face me, his eyes so serious that I didn't dare to look at him. "Ton Nimha," he called my name, very softly, but also very firmly. I tightened the strap of Leanie's bag. "Yeah." Luke Tingda took a deep breath and slowly said, "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." I looked up. My heart felt like someone was squeezing it. He looked at me, his eyes glowing in the sunset. In 10th grade, the first day he moved in, he stood in front of the classroom door, holding a pile of school bags high in his arms, his eyes wet with tension. He pulled up a chair, dropped his book in confusion, and looked around with a confused look. I gasped, not expecting him to remember so clearly. Luke Tingda chuckled softly, his laughter as warm as the early summer wind. At that moment, I knew I was done. I liked you at first sight. My whole body felt like it was struck by lightning. My mind was blank, my heart pounding as if it was about to jump out of my chest. I looked at him, mouth opening and closing like a small fish out of water. Luke Tingda didn't wait for me to react. He walked over, pulled my school bag out of my hand, threw it on the ground, then hugged me tightly. He lowered his head and buried his face in my shoulder, his voice hoarse. "I like you. I've liked you for a long time. I like you so much that just seeing you smile is enough. The whole day was worth it. I like you so much that whenever you're sad, I want to fight the whole world." I was stiff, but my heart was as soft as a sun-dried marshmallow. Each word was like a needle piercing straight into my heart, melting away all barriers, all fears, all reservations. I slowly hugged him with trembling hands, nodding and smiling through my tears. "I like you too. I have for a long time." I don't know how long it took, but Lu Xingda let me go. He bowed his head and rubbed his forehead against mine like a big cat. "Promise me, no matter what happens in the future, don't Forget me. I nodded continuously like a chicken pecking rice, tears not yet dry, smiling. The sky was bright with the last rays of the day. The fallen parasol flowers covered our shoulders. The whole world seemed to stop in that moment. Only me, only him, only two hearts that found each other after many days of silent waiting. From that day on, between me and Lucing Dot, everything was no longer ambiguous. We don't need a title, we don't need anyone to prove it. Just a look at each other is enough to replace all the promises of happiness. On the last day of school, the whole class was busy cleaning the classroom. The sounds of laughter, the creaking of tables and chairs, and the rustling of scraps of paper blended into a noisy yet nostalgic melody. I stood on a chair carefully removing the posters and banners decorating the cultural festival. When I bent down to pick up my things, I accidentally bumped into Lucing Daw's desk drawer. The desk drawer was ajar. Inside was a small, old wooden box. I hesitated for a few seconds as curiosity won out. I gently pulled the box out. The lid was a bit loose, just a little shake, and it popped open. And at that moment, I was sucked into another world. Inside the box are small, miscellaneous items, but neatly arranged. A star-shaped paperclip, a sky blue hair clip, the one I dropped the day I entered school, a roll of stickers with the shape of a parasol flower, a candid photo of me sitting by the window reading a book, and a stack of unsent handwritten letters, just neatly folded and tied with a red yarn string. I trembled as I opened one. The familiar handwriting was slanted strongly. Today, I dropped my books again. I picked them up one by one. Leanie apologized. So stupid, but so cute that people can't take their eyes off of. I opened another letter. It's raining today. You forgot to bring an umbrella. I'll hold the umbrella for you, but I'm all wet. It's okay. As long as you're not wet, I can handle anything. And another letter, shorter. She failed math, sat down at the table and sobbed. I just wanted to run to comfort her, but I was afraid she would hate me. Every letter, every line is like a small needle stabbing straight into my heart, painful but also so warm that I can't breathe. I held Tu's husband tightly in my hand, tears falling without me realizing. It turns out that long before I knew him, he had been watching me from a hidden corner that I didn't know about. No show-off, no demands, just quietly like, quietly care, quietly wait. It turns out you are my whole youth. Have you found it? A familiar voice rang out behind him. I turned back in surprise. Lucing Da stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes filled with helplessness, caught red-handed. I awkwardly hugged Tu's husband. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. He laughed, walked over and gently pinched my cheek. That stupid thing was originally meant for you to see. I rolled my eyes. Lucing Da bent down to pick up the box from my hand, pulled out the smallest letter and placed it in my hand. On the paper was written only one line. I love you. The writing is in pencil, a bit soft because it has been in my hand for too long. I clenched the paper in my hand, my nose stinging. Lucing Da reached out and gently stroked the top of my head, his voice low. From the moment you entered my life, I had no way to turn back. I laughed through my tears, nodding and choking. No need for roses, no need for sweet words. Just little things like this are enough to make me willingly never let go for the rest of my life. That afternoon, we sat under the wutong tree looking at each item in the small wooden box. Each item is a story. Each story is a piece of that silent love. As the sunset fell, Lucing Da grabbed my hand and squeezed it tightly. Recite it. I raised my head. He looked at me. His eyes were so serious that it made me want to cry later. No matter where I go, no matter how the world changes, I will never let go of your hand. I promise. I nodded, smiling through my tears. Outside, the flower petals were flying in the wind. The sunset seemed to turn everything golden. At that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, no matter how many seasons of Royal Point Sienna flowers fell, as long as I had him by my side, I would have a youth without regret. That summer, after all the noise and regret, we entered the most important exam of our student life. College entrance exams. Heavy pressure, long days of studying, late nights filled with the smell of notebooks and the tired light of desk lamps. But just thinking about Lucing Daw's gentle eyes, thinking about the promise he once whispered in my ear, "I will not let go of your hand," I found all the fatigue worth it. The final exam day ended, we sat together under the familiar sycamore tree. The summer sun is bright, the cicadas are chirping loudly. Lucing Daw threw me the bottle of mineral water, lazily leaned back on the stone bench, eyes closed. I sat there fiddling with my handmade bracelet, smiling foolishly. I asked suddenly, "Where are you planning to apply?" He didn't open his eyes, just lazily replied, "Where am I?" I blushed and turned away, hiding my silly smile in my palm, my heart once again burned by his sunlight. A few months later, the acceptance letter was sent home. I passed the entrance exam to University B, my dream school in the heart of the city. When I received the notice, I was both happy and worried because I didn't know how Lucing Daw was. I was so nervous that I didn't get a text from him until late that afternoon. Just one line, extremely simple. Meet at the gate of University B. Classmate. I stared blankly at my phone screen for 5 minutes, then hugged my pillow and rolled around on the bed like a giant worm. Laughed so hard that the whole dorm room thought I was crazy. On the first day of school, the city welcomed us with gentle autumn rains. I stood in front of the school gate with my suitcase in hand, my heart so nervous I almost threw up. In the crowded sea of people, my eyes were only searching for a single figure. And very soon, I saw him. Lucing Daw still has that tall figure, still those deep black eyes, and still that gaze that seems to contain the whole universe. He walked over, took my suitcase from my hand, and lazily asked, "Let's go." I nodded, not saying anything more because all the words I wanted to say had already turned into a wet smile in my eyes. In the days that followed, we spent our college years together, going to school together, taking exams together, skipping class to get snacks, sitting together in the library, pretending to read attentively while actually just secretly looking at each other. Youth has never been so brilliant. No more quiet days of watching alone from afar. No more times of secretly hiding feelings in unsent letters. Now, we can hold hands and face the world with our heads held high, like the sunlight, like the wind, like the parasol flowers falling all over the path, gentle, free, and full of life. One late afternoon, Lucing Daw and I sat by the lake on campus, the rippling water reflecting the honey-colored sunset. I rested my chin on my hand and looked blankly when he pinched my cheek, thinking about something. I stared, wondering what would happen to us later. He chuckled and took out a small object from his pocket. It is a simple silver ring, no fancy, no shiny diamonds, just a slim, delicate circle like the hidden link between two souls. He put the ring on my left ring finger, his voice low. "No need for later, I'm sure now." I looked at him stupidly. He took my hand and squeezed it. "Ton, Niem Ha, I gave my youth to you. I only want to spend my future with you." I laughed, tears fell, not sad tears, but tears of happiness, completeness, and satisfaction. Some people say youth is a lost train, but I know my train has found its destination. The dock is called Lucing Daw, the boy who stood silently behind me during my most naive years, the man who spent his entire youth silently protecting me, waiting for me, loving me with all his tenderness and patience. That summer, when I was 17, I was lucky to turn back, also lucky to catch the first star in my life, My youth had you choose life without regret.